Hello and welcome to the first of two very special editions of Frost Over the World. Over the next 2 weeks, we'll be taking a brief look back at some of the landmark interviews we've done in the past few months. Next week, from Raila Odinga to Sarah Jessica Parker. But right now, we begin with world politics and with an overview from the British Prime Minister, David Cameron, whom I met last year on the 10th anniversary of the 9/11 attacks. 10 years ago, do you remember where you were when you first heard about it?
I remember exactly where I was. I was in my house in the constituency in West Oxfordshire, and I was watching the television and saw what happened. And my wife, Samantha, was actually in New York that day, in Manhattan that day, and I'll never forget the hours of ringing her mobile over and over again and not being able to get through because the mobile phone system was down. I remember exactly where I was when I finally did get through, and how pleased I was to hear her voice. And it had a huge impression on her because of what happened in New York that day and what people felt about it. Obviously, it has been one of the defining events of this century. And I think we're still coming to terms with it and trying to get our response to it right.
Do you think we're near to having a situation of winning the so-called war on terror? I mean, is Al-Qaeda now losing, or is it beating a tactical retreat and it's still as dangerous as ever?
Well, I think what you see is that the growth of democracy, the values we have in the West that I think are shared across the world, I think are very strong. And I think that actually we're now much smarter and better at our response to this problem of violent Islamic extremism and how we deal with it. And I think there have been some notable successes in setting it back. But there's still a huge amount of work to be done. I mean, what I would say is that some of the early things that were done were absolutely necessary. It was right to get rid of the Taliban regime in Afghanistan that was hosting Al-Qaeda. But I think what we've come to see, that as well as the very tough measures like that needed to be taken, there was also a huge amount of work to undermine the whole narrative of the extremists and to set up an alternative to young Muslim, particularly men, who want to see change in the world. And I think the exciting thing about this year, 10 years on, and the Arab Spring, is you see in what happened on the streets of Libya and Egypt, you see people actually yearning for a voice, for a job, for greater democracy, for an end to corrupt governments, for an end to autocracy. You see people who are seizing an alternative to the poisonous narrative of the extremists. And that gives me great hope and optimism for the future, that actually we can see the spread of democracy and rights in those countries rather than the spread of extremism. Al-Qaeda's had almost nothing to do with the Arab Spring. They've been irrelevant.
Of course, the past few months have been dominated by continuing unrest in the Middle East. I turned to the former head of the Arab League, Amr Moussa, in Cairo. He hopes to be a presidential candidate in Egypt very soon. If you were elected president, what would be your most important task?
I must tell you that the country was left in real chaos, and the files, all files of our society, from education to healthcare to security to internal policy and foreign policy, everything needs revision, needs revisiting. So it is rebuilding the country. Rebuilding the country is our task. And I believe the first thing I would do, I personally would do if elected, is to abolish the emergency law. We have lived under this law for so many years now, so many decades now. We have a penal code, we have enough laws and regulations that would bring stability to the country and would punish whoever that goes outside of the law and order. This is something that has to happen perhaps the first day of any new president, including myself. The second thing, not second in order, but also of first priority, is to start combating corruption. And this corruption is not just a cloud in the sky. It is based on laws that were badly drafted and that left a lot of loopholes. This group of laws will have to be put into a major operation of reconsideration and redrafting and reintroducing to Parliament to close all the loopholes that led to this wave of corruption. So many other things, but most important is to start quickly opening the files of the services, bringing in our experts that have been, in fact, excluded from places of authority in favor of the trusted people and the cliques. Also to launch a plan for economic and social development. In short, we are launching a second republic, not the continuation of the first republic. It is, and it should be, totally different republic, a democratic one based on principles that were not really respected for the last few decades.
Still with the Arab Spring, I spoke and had an engaging conversation with the Prime Minister of Qatar. In terms of Libya, you decided that that was an urgent issue, a vital issue that must not go wrong.
You know, when you see the tanks and the plane killing peoples, and it doesn't differentiate from somebody carrying a gun or somebody playing in the kindergarten as a small baby, or a wife, or a child, or an old man, or a hospital, you cannot sit and not to do anything. And I think what we see in the Middle East, it's not bad. I think it's good. Let the people say what they want. Let the people feel that they are free to choose their leadership. And also, I am happy that the leadership in the region, in all the region, in the Middle East region, now they can listen better to their people. They know that they have to do the right things. They have to know that they have to reflect what the people want, not what they want.
That's a major change, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that means more democracy, really, even in Qatar.
Well, we are, as you know, we are working progressively in this, and there is a plan, and we are doing the plan. We are the first country did a referendum in Qatar, and you know the free press, and you know the headache from the free press. We have it. You know, we have municipality election, and also the parliament. I'm sure that's not for me to say, but. You know, there is a plan being done to go forward, to put Qatar in the right place, and also to fulfill what the people of Qatar want.
And in terms of Libya, your intervention was crucial, wasn't it? How much do you think, by the time it's all over, it will have cost you?
In terms of what? In terms of money?
Money.
It's a lot. It cost us a lot.
Of course, the Arab awakening is by no means over. Palestine is not yet even recognized as a state, as we know, by the United Nations. I spoke to two very different voices on Palestine's future. The Israeli government spokesman, Mark Regev, and I began with Palestine's chief negotiator, Saeb Erekat.
We're not coming to the UN as a Palestinian strategy.
Right.
We're not submitting an application for the Security Council for admittance as a strategy. This is part of the Palestinian strategy. I was born as a Palestinian for one purpose. That is to restore Palestine back to the geographic map. Today, we have a government in Israel that installed itself as a source of authority, that deprived us from our jurisdiction in the legal domain, economic domain, security sphere, and Bibi Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel, believes he can do it for another century. He has no responsibilities as an occupying power. He continues with settlements, he continues his occupation, and we have to do his responsibilities. The message to him today, and to the Americans for that matter, this is not sustainable. The status quo cannot be maintained.
The current Israeli government under Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has shown more restraint on the settlement issue than any previous Israeli government. We did a 10-month settlement moratorium. And the American administration, who is, as you know, critical of our settlement policies, called Netanyahu's move unprecedented. So we've shown more restraint than any previous Israeli government. We should at least be given credit for that. I can tell you, I've sat in meetings with my Prime Minister with mayors from Jewish communities in the West Bank, and they've literally yelled at my Prime Minister. They say, you're not allowing us to build. You're not allowing us to develop. And it's true. My Prime Minister is only allowing very, very limited construction so as to give peace a chance.
But world news has not only been filled by the Arab Spring. The Eurozone has been capturing many of the headlines. The Eurogroup's head is Jean-Claude Juncker. He's the Prime Minister of Luxembourg as well. Opinion polls in Greece show that while 70% of Greeks would like to stay in the Eurozone, only half believe the country will actually do so. Do you think they will be able to stay in, Prime Minister?
You can never exclude a new crisis, although I do consider that being at the epicenter of a global threat, we are slowly regaining safe territory. But back in 2007, 2008, I would never have thought that we would have to face a crisis of the dimension of the crisis we had to fight against after the Lehman Brothers collapse. But I don't see in the short and medium term a crisis of that dimension reappearing, neither in the US nor at the euro area. I do think that by the end of the day, the euro area as such and the European Union as a whole will come out of this crisis in a better form than the form we entered it.
One of the biggest casualties of ructions in the euro has, of course, been the Greek government, and they would probably add the Greek people. Papandreou fell from power after he publicly called for a referendum for his people. When I spoke to him, I asked him if he regretted that call, particularly after Ireland had called a referendum there.
I think that the idea of a referendum was the right decision then. I believe that it was wrongly criticized, both from a number of European leaders, but also wrongly criticized by a number of leaders inside Greece and even by a lot of the media, because the referendum basically was saying we give the chance to the Greek people to own this process, the process of change, take on the responsibility that many of the people in the elite in Greece and a lot of the sort of oligarchic, if you like, clientelistic system did not want to take on this responsibility. And I believed we had to put the dilemma directly to the Greek people. And I was of the opinion that this would have been a positive vote for Greece remaining in the euro, but also for the Greeks to say, yes, we will sustain the pain as long as we can make the changes, the bigger changes we want to make Greece a viable economy. People feel disempowered. Citizens feel they don't have a say. People are turning their backs towards our political system. And one of the reasons is that they feel that even governments are powerless in this globalized financial system, which has much more money, much more power, much more concentration of power than what elected governments have. And this is why I think a referendum would also have been symbolically very important for Europe. And the fact that Ireland has made this decision, I think, only enhances, strengthens my conviction on the necessity to have had a referendum in Greece.
You said the other day in an interview, you said Greece will not default and Greece will not exit the Eurozone. Do you still feel, a few days later, absolutely sure about that?
I believe that the package we got yesterday, which we negotiated over the last few months, and the major decision we made was when I was Prime Minister in October on the so-called haircut of the debt, but also of this major package. And now we have implemented many of the measures and voted on them in Parliament. And we have gotten the green light for this package, which was signed yesterday in Brussels. This gives us the time to make the changes, make our economy sustainable, and it guarantees us, therefore, that if we follow this path, and I think we will, I believe we will not exit the euro and we will not default.
The borders of Europe seem to keep moving outwards. Is Azerbaijan, for instance, in Europe? The former Soviet Republic is certainly hosting the Eurovision Song Contest this year. Anyway, I flew out to Baku, Azerbaijan's capital, to meet the president himself. Tell me just for a moment or two about, Mr. President, about Nagorno-Karabakh. Do you see there being a peaceful solution to the situation there in the foreseeable future, or could the situation between yourselves and Armenia and so on, could that still lead to war?
Nagorno-Karabakh conflict is the biggest threat to the region. And Nagorno-Karabakh is a historic part of Azerbaijan. Even the word Karabakh is of Azerbaijani origin. But all Azerbaijanis were expelled from Nagorno-Karabakh in the beginning of 90s, and not only from Nagorno-Karabakh, but 7 districts surrounding Nagorno-Karabakh where Armenians never lived. In total, we have 1 million refugees and internally displaced persons. And from historic point of view, it's our land. From legal point of view, all the international community considers Nagorno-Karabakh as part of Azerbaijan. United Nations Security Council adopted 4 resolutions demanding withdrawal of Armenian troops from Nagorno-Karabakh. So Security Council is a top organization of the world, and other international organizations also. Therefore, we are still hopeful that peaceful solution can be found. That would be in the interest of all the countries. But this solution must be based on international law. Territorial integrity of Azerbaijan must be restored. Armenian forces should leave all the occupied territories. Azerbaijanis should have a right to return to all the territories of their original settlement, including Nagorno-Karabakh. And people in Nagorno-Karabakh should live in autonomy. And there are good examples of autonomies in the world and in Europe.
How far have you got towards a perfect democracy? You're a young democracy, but how many things have you got to do, whether it's to do with human rights or whatever else? How do you make yourself not just a young democracy, but a full democracy?
I think that the achievements during these 20 years were remarkable. First of all, and the most important, was a strategic choice of development of Azerbaijan. Because when we got independence, especially in the early years, situation here was absolutely different from what we see today. And how Azerbaijan is going to transform, what system will be, how to say, acceptable to our people, was a big question. And the strategic choice to build a democratic state was made. And all what has been done since that time was a result of that strategic choice. Today, we have a political system which we never had in all the history of our nation. We have democratic institutions, we have free press, we have free internet, and I can tell you, not every country has free internet. We have more than 50% of internet users in Azerbaijan. We joined various international organizations, for instance, Council of Europe, which main agenda is human rights and democracy, and for 10 years we are members of these organizations. Also, Azerbaijan voluntarily joined the European Union's Eastern Partnership Program. We did it, again, I'd like to mention voluntarily, nobody forced us to do it. So all these are signs of our strategic choice. And we are transforming our economy and also political system. And our target is to become a developed country.
South America, too, has made the headlines, not least when the Prime Minister of Colombia called for the legalization of marijuana. Why did he say that? I wondered.
What I've been saying is that we need to sit down and with an open mind start discussing new alternatives. If the world as a whole considers that legalization is the way, I would support it.
You would?
Yeah, what I'm not going to do is to be the sort of a proposal. I'm not going to take the vanguard and start a crusade for legalization. No, because in my case, in Colombia's case, the drug trafficking is a problem of national security. Drug trafficking is what feeds all our violent and illegal groups. And so we must continue to fight with everything we can and fight all the links of this terrible chain that the drug traffickers have. But if the world decides that there's another option and we will participate in that discussion, then we would support that.
And Africa, too, is never far from our thoughts. Only a few months ago, after a bloody civil war in the Ivory Coast, I spoke with the new president, Alassane Ouattara.
I wanted to bring contribution to my country, so it was my choice to go in politics after having been Deputy Managing Director of the IMF for 5 years. But above all, the people of Côte d'Ivoire, my compatriots, trusted me and elected me with a very large majority, more than 54% of the votes. I found a country which had been mismanaged, corruption, no rule of law, a lot of disorder, military completely divided, and leaders who didn't care about the population. They just thought that being president or minister was to take care of themselves and their family rather than taking care of the country. So I have a challenge, and we're working very hard at that, and I'm determined to make sure that these 5 years of my presidency will bring more to the Ivorian people, more prosperity, and I hope also a better country.
In a minute, some of the rock and roll and movie stars who've joined me here in the studio in the past few months. That's after this short break. Welcome back, welcome back. Over the past few months, I've been delighted to host many of the world's best-known faces in fields beyond politics and current affairs. So in this half of the programme, we'll be revisiting some of those interviews, starting with sport and the glamorous world of Formula One motor racing. I met up with Formula One boss Bernie Ecclestone after an exciting 2011 season. Do you have, over all the years you've been in F1, has there been one driver who was greater than any other?
Well, it's so difficult to say because they had different times, different cars, everything different. I mean, the one that everybody sort of glosses over and never talks about is Alan Prost. Yeah. That could have won a couple more races and lost by 1 point in one place and half a point in another. But otherwise, I mean, this young guy, Sebastian Vettel, at the moment, the German guy, is quite superb. Yeah. So we keep breeding them.
What was your genius as a deal maker? What is your genius as a deal maker? How can you do it?
The word genius I don't like.
All right.
I've been lucky.
I can't say it.
I've been very lucky.
Right.
And no, I think the product we've got and the way that we try and present it is good for people. You know, rarely, I can't even think when people walk away from us and say, we don't want to deal with you anymore. I can travel the world on a handshake. And whenever we deal with anyone, we explain to them what their percentage of making money or losing money is, so they know exactly where they are at the beginning.
Over the past few months, we've also met with many of the world's top musicians. Let's revisit some of them, beginning with the latest soul sensation, Emeli Sandé. Which are you closest to and most passionate about, performing or writing music?
It's difficult because I do enjoy both and they're very separate, but I think I'll be a songwriter longer than I am a performer. So I probably songwriting, you know, I feel like I'll still be writing songs when I'm 60 or 70, so probably songwriting.
I think you'll still be appearing on stage.
Yes.
60 or 70 as well.
I hope so.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Yes.
That would be good. But so yeah, whatever happens, the songwriting will last and last. And so on.
Yes.
Yeah. And was the family full of music? The family house full of music too?
Yes. I mean, it was definitely noisy, and my dad was a big music fan. He still is. So he introduced me to people, you know, great vocalists like Anita Baker, Tracy Chapman, Nina Simone. So I guess it was my dad who brought in those influences in my life, yeah.
And so who of the ones you mentioned or someone else, who are the inspirations, who are the real ones you look up to most? Is it Nina Simone?
Definitely Nina, but then when I got older and started to explore music for myself, like I just loved Tracy Chapman, how she wrote, and I really started to pay attention to tones of voices and poetry and lyric. So Tracy Chapman, Joni Mitchell, really individual women.
Everybody thinks that girl's so fine. Everybody's like, I'll make her mine. Everyone thinks she's a bit of alright, but I think that she's not so nice. Every guy's looking in her eyes. Every guy's checking out her thighs. Everyone thinks that girl's a lady, but I don't.
Does it help if you're writing love songs to be in love?
I think, like, for example, when I wrote Foundations, I was really young when I wrote that song, and I'd never really been in a serious relationship, but I sort of had ideas about love, and I'd had serious relationships with friends and other people in my life, and that I think you can feel that, like, I think you can feel things at a really young age. You can sort of feel like you're in love. And then you might sort of get into a different relationship and think, oh, actually, I think this is love.
This is more the real thing.
This is more the real thing, and I don't know what that was, but I definitely felt like it was real at the time, you know.
Yeah. And how about the pressures of fame and so on? You had this marvellous phrase that you said about that in 2008 you'd had a proper breakdown. I don't know what the difference between a proper one is and not a real one. An improper breakdown. Yeah. But that was a blow, and was that an effect of the strain of the job?
Yeah, I would say so. I think it was an insane amount of pressure. I was really young. I'd never done anything like that before. I'd never been exposed to anything like fame. I don't even really feel comfortable using the word fame, actually. But it's not in my family background or anything, so it was all very new to all of us, and there was just a lot going on, and I was just sort of, it came very quickly, you know.
Yeah.
And I don't think anyone could sort of get through that without it affecting them emotionally, unless they were a robot. Yeah. So I think it's just sort of like human reaction, and that's why I sort of took a step back and I've always made decisions, I think, with my career that I want to protect myself and I want to protect my life, and I'm not interested in being a celebrity. Like, it just doesn't appeal to me whatsoever. Like, I want to be a musician and an artist, and I want to enjoy travelling, like we're saying, and
yeah, you don't want to. Yeah. Although you can't really be a musician and an artist and big audiences without
no, exactly. But you
having
can,
celebrity. You know?
But you can control it, because like I don't sort of. There's different ways of playing out your career, I think. You know what I mean? There's certain things that you don't have to do, because it feels like there's certain things that you get offered that are like just for the sake of getting attention. Whereas I always like to do things that I think artistic integrity, or there's a reason I'm doing it because I'm passionate about it or interested in it, you know.
If our hearts are never broken, then there is no joy in the mending. There's so much this hurt can teach us both. No, there's distance and there's silence. Your words have never left me.
I read that you had this, I think this was just before this album, but you actually had an attack of the familiar phrase, but writer's block.
Yes.
And how does that hit you?
Well,
and how do you get rid of it? Both.
Unexpectedly, like a puma or something, you know.
Yeah,
I mean, I just suddenly it was on top of me and was clawing at my face, and I wasn't really. I honestly didn't. I hadn't really experienced anything like it before. I mean, I've had days where I've not been able to write a song, and then I'll come back the next day or the next week, and I'll be fine. Yeah. But this was 3 months of solid void. I mean, it was there was just nothing.
3 months.
Yeah,
and most days you tried.
I tried and tried for the first few weeks and maybe the first month. I would try every day, and then I stopped trying because I was just too afraid.
Chasing Cars was that a bigger success? I mean, in the intro we were saying the thing about how incredibly popular that song was. Did that surprise you, or did you know it would be?
Well, people kept. This is the thing about Chasing Cars, is people just kept saying, we'd never had in our lives, this is going to be a hit. It was always, hopefully this will be enough to make another record. You know, there was never, this is going to be a hit. But everyone kept saying, this is going to be a hit, this is going to be a hit. To the point where I was convinced that it wouldn't be, you know, because I was very pessimistic. And it just blew everyone's expectations away. I mean, it became our first worldwide hit. I mean, Run, which was a big song on the previous album, was a hit in America and the UK and Holland, some Ireland, some places around Europe, but it wasn't a worldwide hit. But Chasing Cars went everywhere, you know. We just followed around it like dutiful little sort of ducklings.
Yes. Sinatra got fed up with having to sing My Way. Do you mind having to play Chasing Cars?
Well, it's the only thing we have over Sinatra. Apparently, it was a more played song. It was in the charts longer than My Way by Frank Sinatra. No, I don't think we'll ever get fed up. It's people's reactions to it when you play it live. You know, we've just finished a European tour where, you know, in Germany, in Switzerland, in France, in Denmark, Sweden, every single country that English isn't their first language sang every word of that song, and many others in the set. It's something you don't get tired of.
If I had a gun, I'd shoot a hole into the sun, and love would burn this city down for you. If I had the time, I'd stop the world and make you mine, and every day stay the same with you.
How soon before you realised that you had this incredible ability to write the music as well as play the music?
To write music didn't come on. I was messing around on the guitar, and it was only messing around, playing like one string and playing along to records. And then there was an older guy on our housing estate who knew someone else who had a guitar somewhere else, and they came and tuned it up properly. It was always. I didn't realise it was out of tune, and then somebody showed me the chords to "The House of the Rising Sun" by the Animals. So I kind of worked on that for a year, and then the songwriting never really came to prominence until I was maybe 20. So it was just kind of a hobby kind of thing.
Yeah.
Because you know where I came from, or where I come from, my castle estate. What's happened to me doesn't happen to people in Manchester. You know. Although we had the Smiths and New Order and stuff like that, there was never any ambitions to be like a rock star. That was just ludicrous, you know. So I was just playing it because there's nothing better to do, really.
And when did you realise you could be a rock star? You could live your life and earn your money as a rock star?
Well, when I was a roadie for a band.
Oh yeah, that's right.
For about 5 years, who came out of what became known as the Manchester thing, called the Inspiral Carpets, and I went off and toured the world with them. And from an early age, I was so interested in music, I thought my future I didn't think of it in those terms, but I thought I would end up in music, and I thought that was it, to be part of a road crew. And I thought that was great until Liam asked me to join his band. And then I went and kind of rehearsed, I think 2 times with Liam's group. They were called Oasis at this point, and they had all their own songs. And then one day, I just said, oh, I've got a song. And I kind of played it to them. And the minute that they started to play it, what I told them to play, it was the first time I'd ever heard one of my own songs except outside of my own head. And a light bulb came on, and it went from there. And I wrote religiously from then. I must have been 22 or 23, and I was just addicted immediately. And I guess once I wrote my first pretty good song, I don't know, I would have been 22, 23.
22, 20. Which was your first pretty good song?
Live Forever, I think.
Oh.
Yeah. Before that, it was kind of, Oasis weren't very good, and then some of my mates actually were in bands at the time, said that I went to bed one night as one songwriter and woke up the next day and kind of was writing completely different music, and I don't know how that happened, but
does it come to you? I mean, or do you summons it up?
The songs fall out of the sky for me. I'm lucky enough that I don't have to work at my craft. But saying that means that everything that I create is, I leave it all to inspiration. So it's 1000% inspiration. So it means that, you know, I don't go to a room and chip away and, oh, today I'm going to go and write something. I just wait for them to fall out of the sky. And so it means I can go months without writing anything because I'm not inspired.
If you didn't write it down somehow, is it possible you'd forget it?
No, I never write it down. No, it's all in there.
All in there?
Yeah, all in there.
So you're not worried about forgetting it? No, that's interesting.
Well, I've never learnt anything, so I can't forget it. You know, I was never taught guitar by anybody. I kind of picked it up along the way. And I was never taught to sing, and I was never taught how to write songs, you know. So when I've got a few chords together and I'm inspired to write a song, the words just form over a matter of weeks, you know. And I very rarely write them down. And the songs that you do write down, in case you forget them, are the ones that usually end up as B-sides or something because they're not very good. The ones that you remember, the words that stick, they're usually the good ones.
Some of our funnier moments have come when I've sat down with movie actors. Viggo Mortensen, for example, came in to discuss his latest project, playing Sigmund Freud.
There's a rumor running around Vienna that you've taken one of your patients as a mistress.
It's absolutely untrue.
How important, when you're doing a movie about very famous real people, how important is it that it be absolutely accurate? I mean, there you were talking about the cigars, but then you read people writing about the movie and saying, well, did Sabina really have an affair with either of the two men, or both of the two men, or none of the two men? How important is it that you get that right?
Well, I always try to get it right. I understand that in theater and in film, in the movies, there are different ways to tell a story. Some people say, take a movie like Moulin Rouge, the version by Baz Luhrmann, the Australian director. That's kind of wildly diverges from period details in some way. It's sort of a blend of the past and the present, and the soundtrack is all modern music and so forth, and the camera work is quite fancy. In the case of A Dangerous Method, it's really a recreation, you know, a very accurate recreation of the period, and I think David wanted to bring these characters to life as accurately as possible. The screenplay is by a very good English writer, Christopher Hampton, who's been awarded many prizes, and you know, it's based on letters between these people, so actually everything you see in the movie is academically and historically sound. And so we went to every effort to make sure it was right. You know, hence the cigar, and not just what cigar, but how did he smoke them? Anything I could find in terms of photographs, descriptions of him. How many did he smoke? He smoked 20 or 22 cigars every day, like that. So he smoked all day long.
Did you, when you did the scene, did you smoke 22 cigars?
I smoked more than that every day because there's more than one take, so I smoked a lot of them.
Yeah.
Took some getting used to. Dennis Kucinich is someone that I admire, as I admire people like the late Howard Zinn, Noam Chomsky, even Julian Assange. I mean, people who speak truth to power, no matter what it's going to cost them. I think those people are worth their weight in gold. That's why I support those people. It's not out of an ideological interest. It's people who look at the facts and speak about them without any vested interest. There are few of those in the world, unfortunately.
Okie dokie. Now loosen up, empty your mind. Done. And picture your goal. Okay. See her eyes. Blue, no, brown, deep brown, short. Tall, slender, bound. Come on, feel it hard. Now with extra added bonus feel. Come feel it, feel it, feel it, feel it, feel it, feel it. Open your eyes.
Great to see you again, Robin.
You too, sir.
Life is still good?
Oh,
Life
wonderful.
is still frantic?
Not frantic, much quieter now, but really lovely.
Yeah. A contented man.
Ah, yes. I wouldn't content, yes. Content is a good word, yeah. Really happy.
Yeah, that's
Just got married again, which is wonderful.
Yeah, terrific.
Third time.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Third time. Bobcat Goldthwait said getting married for the third time is like bringing a burn victim to a fireworks show. But it's like...
Well, yes, because it used to be that getting married a second time was the triumph of hope over experience.
And what is the third time then?
Well, then you just did it.
Just
then.
sheer will.
Yeah.
Go for it. Just take the leap of faith, dear boy.
You look really fit and so on. You had one brief relapse with
I had
what, 2003 or something.
I had a relapse. I went to rehab in wine country just to keep my options open. And then I had heart surgery 2 or 3 years ago. I had a cow valve. I have a cow valve now, which is great because I can crap standing up. But it's like, you know, it's things of, you know, it's good to have. It's me 2.0. So it's two renovations. Keep moving.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And you're branching out again with the new Happy Feet 2.
Yeah.
Do you prepare for a part when it's a voiceover the same as when you're doing it in the flesh, or is it different?
No, you give it. I mean, you give it the same commitment. I mean, you have to really kind of believe in what you're doing with the voice, and in a weird way, you have to be even more so because these characters are they're larger than life, even though they're small penguins. The Ramon is this little Latino penguin, you know, machito. He's very powerful and in love. He wants women in the worst way, which is usually in person. And Lovelace is very much kind of a Barry White, kind of Al Sharpton kind of penguin. Kind of a Baptist Amateury now. And you get to be big and, you know, and kind of a revivalist. Yeah, you give them the same commitment. You have to.
You were all doing the recording of the voices together, weren't you?
Yeah, which is great.
You think of voices as being done in lonely separation.
Yeah, most of the time it's like bad Skype. You're in a room going, and now, and then there'll be a voice, and you'll see this television. Very good. It's like NASA phone sex.
Yeah.
But it was this weird thing of, with George, you're in the room together, he's there in the recording booth, and it's live, and the feedback is incredible.
Do you have specific dreams of things to do? I mean, other than that you like them, but I mean, you know, have you always... Dustin Hoffman said to me that he'd always wanted to play Hitler, for instance.
Wow.
Which
That'd be a great subtext.
Yes. Yeah.
Definitely going to do it. What are you doing now? Definitely going to conquer Poland. That's like pretty wonderful.
So who will be playing me? The little Jew. Oh, wonderful.
I think I've always wanted to play Einstein, I guess, for the kind of like, yeah, that's kind of coming at the idea of just to see, knowing about him, knowing, you know, his history, I'd be like, that'd be something really wonderful.
Yeah, that would
in
be
a musical.
In a
yeah.
What would it be
Sitting,
called?
traveling at the speed of life? No, I don't know.
You, meanwhile, have acted in 28 out of 37 Shakespeare plays.
I think it's 28, yes. Some of them, many times. Tempest, I've been in 5 times.
And in fact, the play you're doing now, you've been in 4 times.
Yes. It's one of the charms about being a stage actor as opposed to a film and television actor, that you can return to work. And if the work is good enough, it supports a re-examination. And if it's Shakespeare, of course it's good enough. I fell in love with Edward Bond's play when I saw John Gielgud play this role on the Royal Court stage, I think in 1976. I thought it was a marvellous, disturbing piece of work, and because it was about the man who I had fallen in love with as a teenager, William Shakespeare, I determined that at one point I would play it. The Royal Shakespeare Company did a production in Stratford. We actually were performing the play about 300 yards away from where the action of the play takes place, which had a certain charm about it. And we took it to London, to the Warehouse, which has now become the Donmar. And now some, I don't know what, 30 years later, we did it at Chichester 2 years ago, and I wanted us to bring it into the Young Vic. I've always admired that theatre and its work and its audience particularly. And when David Land, the artistic director, had a space, he put us in here 2 years after the Chichester production closed.
I can't surf because I'm really a non-swimmer, but I often feel when you get laughs from an audience, it's like surfing, really, because you ride on the laughter to the next words. And
the audience's laughter becomes part of the performance. I went to see James Corden in the Man with Two Governors, and watching James, who is so gifted at this, riding the laughter in the audience, gives you exactly that feeling. It's an excellent analogy.
You regard him now as a friend.
Well,
Shakespeare.
I've spent more time with him than I have with anybody else in my life. An enlightened English teacher, Cecil Dormand, at my secondary modern school, put a copy of The Merchant of Venice into my hand when I was 12 and had me read it out loud. And although I didn't understand much of it, I always felt comfortable with it. Shakespeare never intimidated me, even though I was not academic in any way at all. That language and those characters resonated for me at once.
Patrick Stewart there. Well, that's all for this week, I'm afraid, but we've had so many stars and so many interesting interviews in recent months that we're going to have to do another highlights program for you next week. So do join us then if you can. See you then.